The semi-finals went the way everyone was predicting, but only just. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. We're going to have a New Zealand versus South Africa final. Many people predicted that from these semi-finals, but England really made South Africa work for their win. We're going to talk about the games a little bit more later on. I do have reviews of each of the games as well if you want to go check those out on the channel. But let's first of all talk about the atmosphere at the games. Atmosphere was a bit flat at both of the games, but I think that after the quarterfinals, it was, I'm not going to say it was inevitable, but the quarterfinals hit such a crescendo just in terms of every single game was exciting. And I think the main thing as well is that the fans that were in the stadium, they were following their teams, which I don't know about the ticketing with the semi-final. There were probably fans of teams that got knocked out, either Ireland or France in there, that kind of affected the atmosphere in there as well. But quarterfinals, they were all smashing games, and you could see neutrals were interested in the results of each of the games as well. And that really added to the atmosphere there, and they were amazing. So then the fact that, it fell flat in the semi-finals, probably not unexpected, but it's still a little bit disappointing, right? They're semi-finals, and, they're going to be, fans in there following their teams, whether, it was Argentina or New Zealand or England or South Africa, who were there supporting their team as they would have done, in the quarterfinals as well. But then I think you had a lot of fans in there who were kind of neutrals, or were going for the underdog, or were going cheering against a team, which, unfortunately with England, that happens a bit. Like I used to do it when I was younger, but now I'm older. Like I don't understand it. Probably because I know a lot more English fans of the game, and most of them that I've met are nice people, and the same in the comments. I interact with them, and they're nice people. And I've as you grow up, you realize that every nation has its arseholes, but I guess some people are just a little bit one-eyed and don't pay mind to the arseholes on their own side, if you know what I mean. But they didn't have the atmosphere of the quarterfinals. The games, even though England, South Africa was close, it still wasn't like a back and forth affair that we had in all of those quarterfinals. It was more of a tense kind of affair, especially if you were English or South African. You're probably on the edge of your seat for that, but not really a kind of rousing type of game where it was kind of, the weather obviously had an effect on as well. So there weren't that many, opportunities to cheer really. But, still, as I said, overall, tournament has been amazing. The local French fans have been amazing. They're obviously disappointed as well that their team went out in the quarterfinals, but you could still hear at times, the bands and stuff in the crowd, giving it welly and all that kind of stuff. So that was nice as well, but you just couldn't lift the atmosphere overall. It didn't help, I think, that one of the games was a bit of a blowout as well. But still, yeah, it's just worth mentioning that. The next thing to talk about is something that was really positive from last week that I really enjoyed, and I think you guys really enjoyed as well. And that was the fact that Mark from Cents Rugby joined me for a chat. We were only supposed to, I told him we were going to chat for maybe like 30 minutes maximum, but we got going and ended up being like 2 almost 30-minute videos, and then in between we had a bit of a chat as well. So it was a bit like I took up an hour and a half of his time, and the guy's so generous as well with his time. I just think it's great that if I ask him to do a collaboration, he says, yeah, no problem, if we can find time, and that's amazing. So big thanks to him. It's always great to chat with him as well, because I feel like we've got kind of similar approaches to the games in terms of our thoughts, but different enough at the same time that we're not kind of repeating each other's thoughts either. We're just kind of adding onto it. And yeah, it's always nice to talk to Mark. And any time he does have time, I'd love to have him back on the channel as well. But I would say as well that it's probably my fault that the quarterfinal one, I put up, and then the semi-final one I probably put up at the wrong time, because a lot of people maybe didn't get the notification for that. But if you want to go back and have a look at that, we looked ahead at the semi-finals, and it's still worth a watch, I think, and just in terms of seeing the opinions there, especially from Mark. Always interesting just to kind of pick his brain on a certain few questions and stuff like that. I think a lot of the stuff that he came out with about the quarterfinals as well was enlightening too. Like, for me as a rugby fan, just sitting down and chatting with someone, it's always good to hear their opinion, and it's something that I'd like to do more in the future as well. Chat with somebody else who likes to make rugby videos too, but I haven't really figured out who else to do it. Like, as I said, Mark's been very generous with his time, but I'm kind of wary of reaching out to too many other channels that might just tell me to get lost or whatever. But if you've got any kind of suggestions on that, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see what can be done for that. But yeah, that was great to actually have the chin wag with Mark. And again, if you haven't watched those videos, go back and watch them, because they're definitely worth your time. Even if the games are done and dusted, there's just, I think, for me at least, some entertaining rugby stuff in there. And next then I want to talk about the URC, so not necessarily Rugby World Cup related, but what I want to talk about it is, and that's the fact that the first round of the URCs happened on the same weekend as the Rugby World Cup semi-final. That is, to me, that's just crazy. Because, like, could you imagine, like, let's say in soccer, the English Premiership kicking off, the opening day of the season on the same day as the World Cup semi-finals in the football? It wouldn't happen. That's why they had that winter break when they had the Winter World Cup, because their administrators know that you don't split your audience. You don't compete with yourself, and that's what rugby did. They put it the first weekend, and then we're going to have the second weekend of the season on at the same time as the Rugby World Cup. And some people say, oh, but those the fans of those teams necessarily won't be watching the World Cup because maybe Ireland aren't in it, or Wales aren't in it, or blah blah blah. But I don't buy that. I think that the World Cup is important enough that people who are real fans of rugby, they're going to watch the final. I think that's one thing for sure. Third, fourth place playoff, I'm definitely going to be watching it because I'm a rugby tragic, but others might give that a skip. But they still, like, there's no guarantee that just because they give them that a skip that they're going to watch URC. Because I think a lot of fans as well, let's say their national team has been knocked out, whether it's in the quarterfinals or in the pools or in the semi-final, the way England did as well, that you're not going to be necessarily up for watching more rugby, if you know what I mean. So I think it's almost like there needs to be, for some fans, there needs to be kind of a mourning period between the end of the Rugby World Cup and the start of the domestic season, just to give them a bit of time to kind of get that interest back in rugby. Because I know sometimes when Ireland have lost, especially when I've been in the stadium, I think that hits the hardest. When you've been in the stadium and you've seen your team knocked out of a Rugby World Cup, it hits hard, and it gets to the point where you don't want to read the papers, you don't want to hear all the analysis on the TV, you don't want to watch YouTube videos, you don't want to even hear the word rugby, for a while after. And for some people, that while can be days, and other people it can be weeks, and other people it can be like that. They won't look at it again until the Six Nations. That's just the way it is. So with that all going on, like the URC, they're trying to, there's this thing about URC equals best league is going around. And I think in certain ways it is, but, and it's not just the URC I'm talking about, because the Premiership is back as well. Top 14 have, been back for a while too. That I don't get it. I don't get why the domestic season has to start at that time. I'm sure they have to fit all the games in, but, why not give us, a couple of midweek games or something like that, and the arguments will be made about, well, in these games you're not going to see the players in the World Cup anyway, and so why does it matter? But to me, it matters. It matters that the domestic competition, the URC, should have its own weekend, and whether it's competing against the Premiership or whatever, that doesn't matter for me. Like, as a Leinster fan, for me, like, the big game this weekend is not the Leinster game; it's the Rugby World Cup final. And last week as well, Leinster's first game of the season away to Glasgow. Like, in the URC, that's a big game. It doesn't matter who's playing in terms of the personnel. That's a big game, because Glasgow were great last season. They got to a European final. Leinster, looking for a bit of redemption the last couple of seasons. They haven't been able to do it. It's a big fixture, but it wasn't a big game last week because you had the World Cup semi-finals on. So I just don't get it. And I hope that in the future, they're going to get smarter people in there that realize this kind of stuff, that schedule things better. It doesn't matter whether it's, young players or wherever that are playing, or players who are kind of beyond their test careers or what have you, kind of a mix of those playing the game. It should still be like the season should arrive with a bang, with a fanfare, not kind of sneak in under the door as the World Cup is winding down. It doesn't make sense to me. But having said all that, if you want more URC, and if you are actually a rugby tragic like me and you are interested in it, we will have a URC video tomorrow looking back at the last weekend. And I know I really bigged that up there, but it's just something that I felt needed to be said about it. But next then, on to some stats. So tomorrow I wanted to do stats for the quarterfinals, but then with the videos that I had last week, I was, as I said, I was very lucky to have Mark on the channel, and I was able to make 2 videos out of it. There wasn't room enough to sit videos in, and I think that's it's part of it is my problem, is that I love talking about rugby, and I talk a lot about rugby. And if I could, if I could make it my job and make 5 videos a day about rugby, I would. But nobody, only people like me want to watch 5 or more videos a day about rugby. So I need to kind of pace it. And that means last week then there's the stats that missed out. But I'm going to be working on a stats video tomorrow. It doesn't mean it's going to be up tomorrow. It's probably going to be up maybe tomorrow evening if I can get all the stuff done. And then if not, it's going to be probably out on Thursday morning. But it's just going to look at the semi-finals. So we're going to go into some of the stats that we talked about before the semi-finals. I might then maybe add a couple of extra in there as well, and just have a look at how those played out in terms of the games. So talking about the games, onto the games themselves. So the first one was Argentina 6, and it was 44, right, for New Zealand. Yeah. So this one, Buffelli got the early penalty, but then Will Jordan is over for a try. 5 minutes later, Jordy Barrett is over for a try. You got and from there, New Zealand, they go in at halftime. They got the try right before halftime as well, right? And they're 20 points to 6 up. And from there, Argentina, they're not coming back. 14 points is a lot to come back in a non-Rugby World Cup game. But in the Rugby World Cup, it seems that, the margins, they're tighter, but it's also harder to overcome those margins as well. And New Zealand just pulled away in that, second half. Argentina didn't score a point. And although they didn't really look like they were going to score a point, because they got to a situation where they knew they'd lost, and all they were trying to do was score a try in a semi-final. It wasn't about trying to get themselves back into the game anymore. It was just going for the try, and therefore, there were kind of penalties that it was a tighter game. I think you would have seen Buffelli call for the tee, but they were going to the corner or kicking up the line or wherever, and it just wasn't paying off for them. But New Zealand, they're amazing. But this was kind of this semi-final was the mismatch that people thought was going to happen because of the two sides of the draw. That you had one side that was stacked, and then Argentina's side, which wasn't as stacked, and that there was going to be, when they came to each other, you just realized that one set of teams was just on another level to the other. And New Zealand showed it, and New Zealand as well. They were a good side coming into the World Cup. They were a much better side coming out of this semi-final. Not that they had to play at their best or anything to win this, but just that cumulatively through the World Cup, they got better and better. And Will Jordan ended up with a hat-trick. Sharon Frizzell got 2. Aaron Smith got 1 as well. Mwanga is just looking better and better at 10 as well. And, they must be going into that final now with great confidence as well. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a mismatch there. The other semi-final, thankfully, was closer and a bit more interesting in terms of the game. So you had Owen Farrell. He gets England off, 2 penalties in the first 10 minutes to get them going. Then Lebock responds to the penalty. Farrell then makes it 9-3. Lebock then gets hooked because he wasn't it wasn't a game for running rugby. And that kind of counted against him, first of all. Then the second one was that, the conditions, had a big effect on the fact that it wasn't for running rugby. But the second thing is his kicking out of hand was very poor, and he put in a poor kick, and then it was just right, get him off. And one of the things that the South African coaching team, Nienaber and Rassie, did was they were just completely ruthless with their decision making. As soon as they felt like a player needed to come off, they didn't give them an extra couple of minutes. They just said, right, get him off. And he was off and Pollard was on. Pollard gets them back within 3 points. Owen Farrell then scores again to make it 12-6 at half time. And, it looked like, it felt like to me, if England could find a way over the try line, that the gap might have just been just enough for them to get into the final. They couldn't do it in the end, and they had chances there as well. But into the second half, then South Africa's bench, not just the bench, again, it was the coaches, their timing of when they took players off. 2 minutes into the second half, and it was who's it? Corbus Reinhardt, right? He puts in a terrible kick as well. Like, I think it was an up and under that went just completely up and under. It didn't go forward at all. And then he's off as well. And you got Faf de Klerk on there. Then Kitsoff wasn't having his great best game either. He gets hooked off fairly quickly as well. Then shortly after that, the big decision to bring on Snyman for Etzebeth so early as well. And that's another one that really paid off for them too. Like, Snyman come up with the try, but he had massive impact in the scrum as well. And all of that done within the first, like the Pollard was on the first half, but the others were, they were off within the first 10 minutes of the second half. Like, and that was a massive impact, I think, for them. And then on the flip side for England, like, Marler and Cole going off for them had the opposite effect really on their scrum. You had Genge and Sinclair coming on, and they're now up against Oxenche and Vincent Koch, and they got completely taken apart in the scrum, and that was difficult for them. And yeah, I think the Boks were just very smart with putting players on, and the fact that those players as well had a lot of impact. The likes of Quagga Smith as well from the bench. Willie LaRue was on there early. Didn't think he had his best game for the Boks, honestly, coming off the bench there, and maybe didn't made it a bit easier to maybe start Willemse next week in the final. But you look at the England bench, and who had an impact off the England bench? Like Bini Villapolo, what did he do? Like, he come on as a blood bin in the first half, and I saw him he's trying to carry out of his own 22 and knocks it on. Then right to death, then the same thing. They're looking for that impact from him in contact to get them that momentum to get in within either a decent penalty chance or drop goal range, and he knocks the ball on, and that's pretty much the end of the game. And it's again, talked about him so many times that I honestly don't understand why he's in the squad, let alone in the match day squad. I think like England have some decent back rowers who are not seeing any game time at all, and for me, he would not have been anywhere near the squad at all. I think there's players who watched the game, the entire World Cup on TV, who would have had a better impact than he did. But then, even like the likes of Kerr coming on, Ford only got the last couple of minutes, like Lawrence only got a few minutes as well. Chesham come on, but I felt that Martins actually did fairly well early on. Like when England were doing well, he was doing well too. And then it felt like the tide had already turned by the time that Chesham come on, and it's very hard in a game like that where it's an arm wrestle that once the tide turns, it's very hard then to turn it back in your favour, and England just weren't able to do it. Even though it was a tight game, only 1 point in it, it never felt like they were in that position where all they had to do was be patient and the penalty was come, or they get in position for that drop goal. South Africa just defended them really well. But it was definitely the better of the two semi-finals in terms of watching it as a neutral. I spoke before about as well, like that, I talked about people cheering against the team, and that happens a lot with England. And again, when I was a young lad, it was kind of the thing to do. You didn't really know any better, but then I got older, and then I don't really see a reason. Like there's certainly just certain players that I think, I don't like that player. But for me, it's not a reason to cheer against the team, if you know what I mean. And that counts for pretty much any team, really, in my book. But it's I just look at it as the same kind of thing that, there's rugby fans, and whether they're English or South African or Argentinian or New Zealanders or Irish or whoever, like, you're just a rugby fan at the end of the day, right? And we all have the same kind of feeling. We all got the thing of, as soon as a penalty is given against us, we think it's a wrong call, but then the rational side of us, at least, will kind of look at it again, think, okay, no, the referee got that right, or whatever. But we all have that kind of passion. We all cheer for a team. We all feel down when our team doesn't win, or we kind of, again, I talked about it. If your team loses, you don't want to even hear the word rugby at some points as well. That and for me, it's the same with England fans or whoever, South African fans. They're just the same as me. So why do I want to cheer for them to lose? For me, it doesn't make sense. If I look at it like a game like this, I want to cheer for a team to win. I don't want to be cheering against the team. And if I look at it and then I think, okay, well, I might cheer for South Africa because I cover a lot of URC, so I know a lot of these players from URC. For me, that's a genuine reason to be cheering for South Africa. For this one, honestly, I wasn't cheering for either team in it. I was just it was one of those ones where it could have gone either way, and I was more interested in seeing how the teams were kind of navigating that and figuring out a way to actually get into that position to win. So that was the bit that I enjoyed about this game. And it's kind of strange because most times I will pick a team, that I want to cheer for in a game, whether it's because they're the underdog or because I'm familiar with the players or wherever. But this one, I honestly didn't pick a team to cheer for, and there was no kind of elation of, South Africa winning or or kind of disappointment that England lost or anything like that. It was just, I thought it was a very interesting game to watch, because it was more the way England, first of all, got themselves in that position where they stood up to the box, and then they just kind of start eking out that lead and just slowly stretching it, but then the box, the way the coaches were able to change that with the replacements they brought on, and the timing of those replacements, I think, was vital. And then they snatched back the momentum in the game, and then England just could not turn it back their way. And that was kind of the interesting bit for me at the end, was whether England could actually do it. When they were there around halfway, I was wondering, okay, so who in the England team now is gonna make the break? I was thinking, okay, Lawrence is on, he's looking a little bit lively, maybe he's the one that's gonna provide the break. And then I was thinking Bini Vunipola, avoid him because of the issues that he had before. And then on the South African side, I was thinking, right, well, who's the player who's gonna stop that? And my first thought was Quagga Smith, because Quagga Smith is so good over the ball, and thought if Quagga Smith or even Fourie get over a ball, then that's going to be the game done. And England have to, how are England going to avoid letting either of those get over the ball? So for me, that was the excitement for me about the end of the game. But it was still definitely the better of the two semi-finals. But South Africa did come up with the win there. And now we have the third, fourth place playoff is Argentina versus England. So that's a repeat of the opening game in Pool D between these two, where England won that one. Ford just with an absolute masterclass. He got 3 drop goals, but completely ran the show. And they had 14 men for pretty much the entire game, and that was the game, I think, that really set them up to make it this far in the tournament. And I think England have definitely improved since then. Argentina have improved since then as well, but I'm not sure if they've improved as much as England have. And I guess we'll see the proof of that in the third, fourth place playoff. But sometimes you wonder, with players and fans and stuff going into something like that, third, fourth place playoff, how important it is to them. I think with some of the more traditionally big rugby nations, it's not as big a deal. But I certainly would imagine with Argentina, like it's a big deal to maybe finish third at a World Cup, and but I think for this England this group of players, I think it's going to be a big deal. The last World Cup, we saw players like taking off their losers medal and stuff like that. But third, fourth place playoff, I think, is a little bit different, because you have to win a bronze medal, whereas in a final, you get there, you have your silver medal, your runners-up medal, and then you have to win the World Cup itself in it. So your efforts that day don't really go into the medal that you get if you end up on the losing side. But yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. Then the final as well, you've got two massive powerhouses of rugby clashing to basically for bragging rights for World Cups, right? Who's going to be that one to just get one ahead of the other now, until possibly 4 years' time in Australia, when the other might have a chance to square things back up. But yeah, I think that's going to be a massive final. There's going to be a lot of excitement about that as well. But that's going to be the end of the chat for this week. So as I said, we're going to have URC tomorrow. We're going to have stats as well. We're going to have previews of the third, fourth place playoff, and the finals as well. And then, you know, all the way through the rest of the season as well, we're going to be covering, you know, tons of rugby as well. But as I said, if you've got any ideas in terms of, you know, any other collaborations and stuff, I'll, you know, pop some names down there. I'll see what I can do. I can't promise anything, obviously, but you know, it's always fun, I think, to chat with another rugby head on the channel. But I'm always happy as well just to chat with you guys too, whether that's, you know, me chatting to the mic here or down in the comments as well. And I try my best to answer as many comments as I can. Through the World Cup, I found that, you know, I'm not getting notifications on all of the comments. I don't know why. So sometimes I'll go in and there's a comment from like a couple of weeks ago or something that I was never notified on and stuff like that. So I do my best on that. And if I haven't answered your comment, it's not because I'm being ignorant and ignoring you. It's just because I haven't seen it. But I'll do my best again to get to as many as I can. But thanks for joining me, and I'll hopefully catch you on another video.